Good morning and welcome to this January 9th, 2018 meeting of the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors here in the Santa Barbara hearing room. We are experiencing serious flooding throughout the county, and Supervisor Williams couldn't make it, and we're going to go through our admin agenda, but we won't go to the departmental agenda except for one item today. So, Mr. Allen, would you call the roll, please? Departmental agenda item number 1, the SB-SERS board appointment, that we will move on. We also have an ex-agenda item about a proclamation of the flood emergency. So would you call the roll, Mr. Allen?
Mr. Williams, Ms. Wolf?
Here.
Ms. Hartman?
Here.
Mr. Adam?
Here.
Mr. Lavignino?
Please stand for the pledge. Ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
CEO Miyasato, do you have a report for us today?
Chair Hartman and board members, thank you. As you know, we have on the agenda an emergency item we would like you to approve into the record and to hear today, and that's a proclamation ratifying the emergency that we declared yesterday. Unfortunately, none of our emergency personnel could be here today because they are busy in the EOC and out in the field. I just spoke to our fire chief, Chief Peterson, a moment ago, and he did tell me there have been fatalities. They haven't been confirmed on the number, so he wasn't able to report that to me. They've called in 10 additional helicopters, 2 additional urban search and rescue task forces, 6 additional strike divisions, which means 30 fire trucks and crews, and other positions. There are lots of reports of missing persons, and everyone is out in the field assisting in those search and rescues. I know there's been a queue of calls for search and rescue, and they are working on all of them. So we can't say enough how important this is and how significant this is. I think the county did what it could in asking for evacuations and mandating evacuations yesterday, but people are all in the field today working hard as they can, and so today we're asking you to ratify the proclamation. And just to let you know, we will be doing a letter to the governor and asking that the governor also declare an emergency for the county of Santa Barbara.
Thank you. Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, to follow up with CEO Miyasato, I was at the Emergency Operations Center right before this meeting and spoke to the incident commander, and just again following up, she noted that the biggest concern are the rescues and access to carry individuals out. The debris flow obviously has been very extensive with down power lines. They've called in other agencies to assist with urban search and rescue. What she told me is that there are 2 confirmed fatalities by the incident commander, and if there's any further notifications, that would be made by the sheriff. Also that obviously the Highway 101 being closed from Milpas South to Seacliff North. I had an opportunity to speak with our CHP commander. Everyone in the EOC is working really hard, and they also told me that there was some folks thought that there were 2 or more structure fires, and what was confirmed to me was that there was 1 structure fire, and it was from a gas line break. So the message is right now for people to stay at home, stay in place. We have our representatives from public health, and I know that yesterday there was a notice that was sent out about the public health hazards of the mud debris, and encouraging people or telling people to stay out of the mud and the dirty water to the extent that they can. And I don't know if there's anything else that Public Health wants to say, but that was the latest information that I got yesterday from your department. But I think it bears repeating because of the extent of the mud flow. And we also know that kids are home from school today, so that everyone just be alert to that issue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let's go next to Mr. Allen.
Chair Hartman, members of the board, I do have one individual who'd like to speak on the flood update that we just received, Mr. Caldwell.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm Andy Caldwell representing COLAB. You know, it's with great sadness that people have lost their lives and people have lost their homes. But what really bothers us is that the people that have lived in this county for a really long time, some of them for generations, knows that fires and floods are routine in our region. Now, this particular flood hazard was, you know, primarily accentuated by the fire, not actually the rainfall. But, you know, I've lived in the Central Coast for 50 years now, and it's always stunned me that people, especially in the South County, refuse to forget, absolutely refuse to forget the 1969 oil spill, but they conveniently forget the 1969 flooding. I was in Lompoc, which bore the brunt of that at the time. The flow in the San Ynez River was 120,000 cubic feet of water per second. The capacity of the river was 60,000. So there was as much water flowing on the outside of the river as there was through the river. And the bottom line is, when we started COLAB, one of the first items, we met with Congressman Lagomarsino, then we met with Congressman Huffington, and I think we may even met with Congressman Capps and Seastrand in between there, of getting that river opened up from the Willows. And the bottom line is, you know, I think I've written probably at least 15 columns on this in the last 20 years. We not only protect the fuel on the hillsides that ends up becoming the fuel for the fire, the brush on the hillsides becomes the fuel for the fire, we also protect what we call riparian habitat. That riparian habitat diminishes the carrying capacity of rivers, streams, and creeks. And secondly, when the flood comes, it becomes debris. And that debris takes out homes, it takes out banks, it takes out roads, bridges, and culverts. And that's why this theme that I've repeated over the years was fires, floods, and fools. Our ancestors were smarter than we were. They knew that channelizing creeks had a purpose. They knew that control burns and fire breaks had a purpose. They knew that maximizing the carrying capacity of rivers, streams, and creeks had a purpose, and that purpose was to save lives. And I've been before this board probably 20 to 30 times over the years saying that people are going to lose their lives because of the policies this board has put in place. And that's where we're at today.
Thank you. I believe that comment was in response to our CEO's report. Do we have any public comments on matters not on today's agenda?
Once again, Mr. Caldwell has a slip on public comment. And I have two other requests that just came in. So Mr. Caldwell will be followed by Pauline Kahn and then Denise Adams.
There's two things I wanted to bring up. One of them is the cancellation of your meeting. I can understand if your meeting is causing critical people to be pulled away from their duties, that would be a reason to cancel. Other than that, if Doss Williams is the reason, I don't know why you'd cancel it. I know there may be some people impeded from coming here, but again, there's other people that did show up for the meeting. One of the things that I wanted to bring up with regard to today's agenda, and since it's canceled, I guess I can talk during public comment on it, is it's absolutely amazing to us to watch the response of the county and the state to the federal announcement that they want to reopen leases. And again, I know the 69 oil spill is the reason of the day for saying we don't want that. But have you thought about the fact that if the feds do open up those leases, and the county and the state and the coastal commission say, well, we won't allow the pipelines to come on, or we won't allow processing facilities to be built, then their alternative is to just tanker from federal waters? And what we can't fully grasp is the feds are saying they invite offshore leases, which will bring revenue, one way, shape, form, or another, and jobs to the region, and the politicos say, hell no. Then you turn around, and the feds say that they're going to punish and or potentially prosecute people for marijuana, including government agencies taking in the revenue, and you say where there's a will, there's a way. So how is it that oil is less desirous than marijuana? If you want to talk about health impacts, marijuana can trigger onset of schizophrenia. You want to talk about global warming? Lawrence Livermore Laboratory scientist and a member of the IPCC says each joint produces 2 pounds of carbon. Multiply that by 40 million pounds of pot. The bottom line is whether it's pollution or health concerns, how do you compare oil and marijuana? One being illegal, the other one the federal government supporting in terms of your policies, and impacts to the economy and quality of life. Thank you.
Pauline Kahn, to be followed by Denise Adams.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Perhaps this is not the best time to be here because of all that's going on outside. And Das Williams is not here. I live in the 1st District. I have 2 agenda items, not agenda items, but public comment items. One is I live just above the lower part of Mission Canyon Road, right at the intersection with Foothill, and I am asking to please slow down traffic in the 600 and 700 blocks of Mission Canyon Road from 35 miles per hour to 30. And my second reason for being here is please have the Mission Canyon Road corridor become a county historic landmark. It comprises a geologic Chumash mission and pioneer history that is unparalleled in Santa Barbara. It is the oldest and the last natural-looking north-south corridor from the city to the foothills. I have nominated the entire historic cultural landscape from the Old Mission to Foothill Road, including parts of West Mountain Drive, Mission Ridge Road, Alameda Padre Serra, and the 600 and 700 blocks of Mission Canyon Road for historic landmark status as a historic site. This is Santa Barbara's most intact historic area and is located in both the city and the county. Mission Creek Bridge landscape is 3/4 in the county and 1/4 in the city. Mission Canyon Road corridor contains Chumash artifacts and archaeological site. The pioneers who built the 19th and early 20th century sandstone walls cherished nature and kept the native plants and topography as part of the landscape. Architects Luda Maria Riggs and Windsor Sewell designed homes along the corridor. The feel of Chumash and pioneer days still exist. I have written this tome, 487 pages. The nomination document has a lot of history in it, and it has been submitted to the County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission and the City Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission. This particular edition is for you if you want it. If you don't want it, would you please return it to me? It has more than 1,300 hours of volunteer labor and $78 of donated binder and materials. Thank you.
Is it online or?
It is online. David Villalobos of your planning department has put it online, yes.
Thank you.
And in this letter, it tells you where to access it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Denise Adams.
Good morning, Supervisors. I'm here today representing Vista del Montecito. This is my third fire in 9 years, and it's not pleasant. And I want to thank the few of you who have been responsive to Montecito in the past, but part of our problem, from my perspective, having been there since 1980, is we really do not have adequate representation for Montecito, and we have advisory boards. I did go and made an effort to go on January 3rd to the Montecito Planning Commission meeting, which was not canceled, even though most of us had been evacuated for up to 3 weeks, and we're just now returning to ash-infested homes to the tune of $100,000+ in damages, with no mattresses, sleeping on the floor, only to be returned again into evacuation modes. When I called my district supervisor's office, I was told it was no big deal, because the evacuation order had been lifted prior to Christmas, so there was no reason why we couldn't all attend a meeting on January 3rd. It was no big deal. We're back. Doesn't matter that our mattresses are in the dumpsters. The environmental health department's out telling us it's toxic. It was no big deal. So I think Montecito lacks a level of leadership. When I went to the Montecito Planning Commission meeting, I was told that they are accountable to no one. They are an entity to themselves. I would like to get clarification from the board what the Montecito Planning Commission does. If it's only advisory, it's insufficient at this point. We have some special needs that we've requested, for example, related to public safety. Barker Pass Road is the direct major evacuation route, taking all of Westmont, Cold Spring School, Coyote Road, Mountain Drive off that hill. It is half city, half county. We need some mechanism to how Barker Pass Road's going to work in an evacuation. Public safety is a big issue for us. It's lined with eucalyptus hills. We have asked since the fires in the fire in 1978, the Coyote Fire, to remove or deal with those eucalyptus trees, which there's about 7,000 of them, but along Barker Pass, they're highly combustible, and they're on our major evacuation route. We would like to ask you for leadership, because in our little town, West Montecito, where I happen to be, the Westmont Quarter, there is no leadership, no representation. We're very concerned about our safety, and we hope at some point the Board of Supervisors can assist us, because it's not coming out of our local community. And I have, and our neighborhood has participated in the wildlife seminars on the wildlife implementation plan. However, the terms don't get evacuated. The controlled burns that are recommended in the plan, they're ignored. So again, thank you for your concern and for listening to us and for what you do. But it is a very frustrating experience, and I can say 3 fires in 9 years is a little more than this 65-year-old can handle. Thank you.
So that concludes the public comments on matters not on today's agenda?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'd like to go back and approve the minutes. Can we do it all in one motion, the 4 sets of minutes?
Yeah, that would be appropriate.
So may I have a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th, 2017, December 14th, 2017, December 21st, 2017, and January 3rd, 2018?
So moved.
Okay, and all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes stand approved. So what I'd like to do now is turn to our administrative agenda, then we'll go to the X agenda item, then we'll work on a next meeting date, and then we'll discuss departmental agenda item number 1, and then we'll continue departmental agenda number 6, and the others we will continue to the meeting date that we decide. So, Mr. Allen.
Chair Hartman, members of the board, just getting started with the administrative agenda. We did post an addendum last Friday, adding 2 items to the administrative agenda, and we also posted a next agenda item for your board to consider as well, and we'll talk about that in a little bit this morning. Item A38 was added to the agenda last Friday. That's from Supervisor Hartman. It's an appointment of Jessica Tade to the Historic Landmarks Advisory Committee. And then item A39, also from Supervisor Hartman, this was to approve the appointment of John Park to the Planning Commission. This is a term ending December 31, 2018 in the 3rd District. And we'll be discussing that item in a couple of minutes, I assume, because we're going to continue that one as well.
Right. So, and that was D. Let me ask a question of Mr. Gazzoni. Yes, Mr. Allen?
I just want to note I also have a request to pull item A28 and a request from the public to pull item A21 for discussion.
All right. Would you read A21 into the record?
Madam Chair, members of the board, item A21 is from the Public Works Department, and it comes to the board as the Board of Directors of the Flood Control and Water Conservation District, and this is to consider recommendations regarding the Lower Mission Creek Flood Control Project, reaches 3 and 4. This is in the 1st District, and I have Azam Mirakarabi to speak on this item.
Please.
Good morning. My name is Azam Mirtorabi. I am the owner. My name is Azam Mirtorabi. My husband and I, we own the property at 3224 Delavina Street. I'm here to remind you that this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. That means that you must deeply and objectively consider this, our objections that our attorney made and we have made here today. And also, I was informed by the clerk that you already made your decision. You are going to approve this. I just want to ask you to defer your decision after you read our objections. And then another thing I wanted to put on the record is that I provided a DVD of the document. That DVD contains documents that we recently received from the county. We do that in protest because we asked for documents for a long time, has not been provided. Just recently they provided some, so we object to this, and then we want to, just the record to reflect the same. And I want you to read our objections before you make your final decision. This is directly related to our property. We have not been informed of this agenda item from the county. I found it by accident. So I'm here to just tell you, please be careful before you render your opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Did you want to? Mr. Gazzoni?
Chair Hartman and Supervisors, I understand that public comment came in on item A21, which was a contract amendment concerning the Lower Mission Creek Flood Control Project, but there were also comments within that address item D6 that the board may wish to continue. We've checked with flood control just now, and item A21 is not exigent for today. The board has the option of approving it today, or considering it today, or moving it to the 30th along with item D6, if that is your desire. Contrary to what the speaker said, item A21 is not a quasi-judicial item. It's a legislative act of approving a contract, and probably best thought of as that this contract involves studies of reaches of the project, portions of the project that overlap with item D6.
My sense is the two might work together and that it would make sense to continue them both. So could we hold this out and then, or move to continue it when we consider item D6? Okay. And so then A28, CEO Miyasato.
I'm sorry, I was going to speak to 828.
Yes, but we need to read it into the record.
Chair Hartman and members of the board, item 828 is from the Sheriff's Department. It's recommendations regarding the creation of the Stepping Up Initiative Governing Board.
Supervisors, I'm not sure which of you pulled this, but I appreciate that. I'm asking that the board continue this item until the meeting of the 23rd, and I've also talked to the sheriff about that.
And Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And is there a reason it needs to be the 23rd? Because it would seem like it might be more advantageous to wait till the next CCP meeting, which is early February. So if we can make it till after that, that would seem to be better, unless there's some reason why it needs to be the 23rd.
Supervisor, through the chair, we could, although that's the date that I talked to the sheriff about, was the 23rd. It's because there's another meeting of the Stepping Up group that he was trying to accommodate. But I would appreciate if we could at least list it on the 23rd, and if I have more time to talk to him, we can continue it at that meeting to the next February meeting.
So I think this we want to consider now then. Could I get a motion to continue A28 until January 23rd?
So moved.
All in favor say aye. Any opposed? So that item is continued. So were there any other administrative items? Mr. Allen, A28, A21?
Chair Hartman, members of the board, I guess at this time we may want to consider the continuance of A39, which is the appointment to the Planning Commission.
Yes, thank you.
So we may want to also consider then
continuing that to the 23rd as well.
Unless your board is going to have a meeting next week, I don't, you know. If you want to,
Dr. Russell, what day? We tried to hurry this to be to have an appointee for the Planning Commission at its next meeting. The next meeting has been, I think, postponed. So when can we appoint?
Madam Chair, my understanding is that pursuant to the MATI Act, there is a noticing period that has not yet run its course, so it would be wise. We request that you make the continuance to, it can be as soon as the next meeting, whenever that meeting would be. We had tried to get the person, Mr. Park, seated for the meeting tomorrow, but it's just not possible. So whenever your next meeting is soon enough. Thank you.
Okay, and we haven't discussed that yet, but Supervisor Wolf?
I just need some clarification. You said a Planning Commission meeting has been postponed. Is that tomorrow's meeting?
No, tomorrow's meeting, through the chair, Supervisor Wolf, tomorrow's meeting has not been postponed.
Okay, so which is a big meeting for a lot of folks.
Yes, it is.
So then to Madam Chair, why wouldn't we approve this so that you have someone on the...
We tried, but we have other requirements for the length of time that the opening has to be posted, and we haven't met that time frame.
Yes, that's my understanding. I was informed of that this morning by the clerk of the board, and I believe that Mr. Gazzoni concurs.
So you won't have someone... Well, that just, for such an important issue, then maybe then the marijuana issue tomorrow should be postponed so that someone from the 3rd District can sit there, unless your current commissioner will be seated.
She's had a tragedy in her family and she's not even in the area right now.
Supervisor Wolf, through the chair, I'm sure that your point and the issue that you identify, quite valid and important issue, will be discussed by the Planning Commission tomorrow. I will make sure that they are aware of and discuss that issue, and then it will be up to them.
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Russell. Mr. Gazzoni, can you tell me what is the legal framework for how long openings have to be posted? And is it just for Planning Commission?
No, under something that's referred to as the MADI Act, there's a public notice that goes out, and then there's a statutory time period after that before which an appointment cannot be made, and I think we're a few days short of that for today's meeting.
And is that just for planning, for the
No,
planning?
it's for all vacancies, all scheduled vacancies, all scheduled
For
events.
all of our commissions when we make appointments?
Yes, and clerk of the board does that as a matter of course, is to put those out ahead of time.
So that means the HLAC appointment cannot go forward either, is that correct?
I'm just curious if other board members are aware of this. When I appoint commissioners, I don't know that there's a time frame. So can you tell us what that is?
We're going to go ahead and pull up the MADI Act so that Mr. Gazzoni can read the exact language. But when this actually only applies to special vacancies where there's someone that leaves during a term, in the midst of a term, then we post that notice pursuant to the MADI Act, and Mr. Gazzoni will describe the exact dates that we deal with, the time frames. But last week when I received the information regarding the 3rd District Planning Commissioner, that day we posted the notice, and that notice that I posted pursuant to the MADI Act allows the board to make the appointment no sooner than January 16th.
And does that apply for HLAC as well?
So it's only when someone leaves a position in the middle of their term?
That's correct.
Well, I will just say, and now understanding this, but it's really unfortunate that tomorrow we're going to have such an important meeting and not have a full commission there.
I can say that the 3rd District Planning Commissioner will be in attendance in the as a member of the public, and so won't be able to participate then in discussions, but at least will be engaged, and that's about the best we can do under these circumstances. Okay. So I think we're ready for a motion to approve the administrative agenda except for items A39 and A21. And may I have a motion?
I will move that we approve the consent, all of the consent items, with the following notations: that item A28 is being moved to January 23rd, and we are continuing item A21 and A39.
May I have a second? And thank you for that. All in favor say aye.
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 Except maybe A21, you want to talk about it, how it relates to the departmental agenda.
Right.
Yeah,
Mr.
correct.
Gazzoni.
I think it just might help the clerk of the board if you're continuing A21 to have it continued to a date certain, and would
All
you
right.
want to do
So that brings the next meeting date, and there
Why don't we
is.
say the date certain would be at our next meeting date?
And I think that actually the request on, if we link A21 and A30 would, excuse me, and D6 would have both of them go on January 30th based on availability of counsel for the owner as well as Public Works. So January 30th would be my recommendation.
Okay, so I'll move A21 be continued to January 30th. That'll be the motion.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, that brings us then to the X agenda item. Mr. Allen, would you read that into the record, please?
Chair Hartman and members of the board, we did post an X agenda item and distribute this to the board. This is from the County Executive Office, and the recommendations are regarding the ratification of a proclamation of a storm emergency.
And procedurally, we have to vote to accept this onto our agenda and allow public comment, and then we have to actually vote on the substance. So
I'll make a motion to accept it and to accept public comment.
Second.
Okay, and are there any public comments on this item?
I have no request to speak.
Okay, so all in favor of Supervisor Lavanino's motion to bring this into the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that brings us then to the proclamation itself. CEO Miyasato.
Chair Hartman and board members, if whoever makes the motion, if I could request that you add in there that the board also requests that the governor of California proclaim the county of Santa Barbara to be in a state of emergency.
Okay, Supervisor Lavanino.
I will direct the governor to declare Santa Barbara a state of emergency, please.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the ex-agenda item stands approved. So that takes us to the next item, which is when is our next meeting date? And I believe next Tuesday does not work, but next Wednesday would work, and that would be January, is that 17th?
I'm out of town 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Sorry. I'm available next Monday and next Tuesday. Why is Tuesday not work?
I think Supervisor Wolf, you're not available?
Yeah, yes, I'm not available.
You know, if I could, you know, schedules have consequences, and people do schedule things when we have days off, and especially if they're national holiday. And so, you know, I think you just have to put off until the following week.
So your suggestion is what date, Supervisor Adam?
What's our next regularly scheduled meeting? 23rd?
Well, then I'm in Washington, D.C. on the 23rd, so...
so you weren't coming to the next
I wasn't going to come to that meeting anyway, so I'm at NACO. But I did that with the plan of what was going to be on the agenda on the 23rd and not on the 9th. So I do want to hear the items that are scheduled for today. That's why I came today and checked ahead of time to make sure we were having a meeting today.
Right. Yeah, for the record, I started checking. I don't know what time you started checking, but I was starting to check before 6 o'clock in the morning. And we could have waved this meeting off anytime up until 7 o'clock when my staff and I start the trip down. And, you know, frankly, even after that, had we gotten a call at 7:30 and said turn around to Buellton, we would have. But we're here, and I know that it's a tough deal. I would have called the meeting off had I been chair yesterday, but since we're all here and dressed up, and I got my Alabama tie on, by the way, for everybody to
congratulations
say
on your
thank
win.
you very much. Yeah, Saban's a genius. So anyway, I'm ready to have a meeting today, but I know
no. If I could just say, I just think that would be. I can't even find the words. I spoke to our CEO yesterday because there were a number of comments and people who were concerned about having this meeting today because of the evacuation that was taking place, and they knew that they probably wouldn't be able to come here. Well, now it's even worse with the highways closed. It is, and I thought that early this morning, potentially we could have made the call to have canceled the meeting, but that didn't happen. But I think we would be disenfranchising a lot of people who are interested in this discussion and can't come to the meeting, may not even have electricity to even be watching the meeting. And on top of that, to go into this whole meeting is just disturbing, and I disagree with one of our public speakers. When we have our first responders out right now searching for our citizens, and it feels really bad for us to just think that this is another meeting. This is an emergency situation that we are in. And in my years of serving on the board, the loss of life is just a tremendous impact to our community, and I don't think it's something that we should take lightly. So, I'm sorry that it's an inconvenience to some of us. I would say that we reschedule a meeting then for the 25th, which is a Thursday, and there's no, we don't have SBCAG or anything else. We would just have 2 meetings that week, the 23rd and the 25th.
Well, Madam Chair.
Yes.
First off, I think we're also starting to infringe on County Council's ability to get done what we're asking them to get done with what this meeting is. And I totally agree with the idea about canceling today or rescheduling today. I get that. I just wish I would have had notice of it, but I understand the reason, and I'm okay with that. But we can't reschedule this thing for 2 weeks from now. We're on a shot clock, and we need to get this business done. So I don't want to wait till the 25th. By the way, that's the NACO trip, which is the 23rd through the 26th. And like we said, this is why we schedule things, and that's why I was planning on being out of town. But we have Thursday of this week, Friday of this week. We have the 15th, the 16th. And the problem is
I could do the 19th. I thought you weren't going to be here.
No, I'm not going to be here the 19th. The 11th, the 12th, the 15th, the 16th.
Those are all options.
Right. And the problem is we don't know if it's going to be any better 4 or 5 days from now either. So, I mean, it was the same thing with the fires. When we rescheduled, people were still evacuated when we wanted to with the date that we were going to reschedule to. So, I mean, I understand the sensitivity of it, but at some point we're going to have a meeting. And I agree with you. It's probably not today, but it should be soon.
Well, so what day are you suggesting?
Does the 11th work?
Yes.
I can do the 11th. I have to reschedule everything, but it's fine.
Supervisor Adam?
I'd like to ask for a 10-minute break.
Sure. 10-minute break. We'll reconvene about 5 till 10. Okay, reconvening our January 9th, 2018 meeting of the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors here in Santa Barbara, and we are going to reschedule many of the items on today's agenda, and we've been trying to figure out complex schedules and when we could all get together and when we could get a room. So we've explored various options, and it looks like this Friday, January 12th, from 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and that would be in the Planning Commission room, Mr. Allen? Okay, so we're rescheduling this meeting items D2 to D5. Continuing those items. I think Supervisor Lavanino.
I was just going to say, do we need a motion or
I think we do.
Is that just
yeah.
direction? Okay,
I'm just trying to make sure that that works for everybody. We talked to Supervisor Williams, and he said that's okay.
And
Mr. Gazzoni.
Chair Hartman, although generally this is an area where the board has great discretion in rescheduling, I believe you do have a public comment speaker who would like to address the board on this on the dates.
Okay.
Yes, hello. I do want to speak in regards to the cannabis issue that was scheduled for today. However, after talking with some other people, I was told it's probably best just to wait and have it all on the same day. So I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, and we apologize for the scheduling difficulties. So with that public comment, I think we're ready for a motion then. Mr. Gazzoni?
Chair Hartman, and as I understood it, this would be only as to D2 through D5, and then you would separately handle D6?
And D1.
Okay.
Supervisor Adams?
So there will be no agenda.
Yeah, we've taken A21 and put that with, we postponed that to January 30th, so you're right.
I'm right, there will be no agenda. Okay, so
Okay.
That's good.
Okay, so I think we're ready for a motion. Would it be a motion to continue these items to Friday, January 12th? Second? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. So that brings us to item D1. Would you read that into the agenda, Mr. Allen?
Chair Hartman, members of the board, item D1 is from the County Executive Office. It's a hearing to consider appointments to the Retirement Board of the Santa Barbara County Employees Retirement System. And I'll just note that these appointments are the result of a recruitment effort that was initiated several months ago. That effort resulted in 8 candidates coming forward, the establishment of an ad hoc committee consisting of Supervisors Hartman and Lavanino to review the applications and then come to the board with recommendations. And so I'll turn it over to the members of the subcommittee.
Okay, Supervisor Lavanino, did you want to say anything? I just want to say we had some wonderful candidates.
I just wanted to thank everybody that filled out an application, and everybody was, obviously, everybody we spoke to was qualified. Well, I think everybody that applied was qualified, and everybody we spoke to was outstanding, and I just appreciate the fact that people are willing to step up and serve their community in such a, especially a very difficult position as the Board of Retirement. And I think we had a lot of really good qualified candidates, and these were the 2 that we felt were probably
help to balance out the board as a whole. Yes. Yep. So, okay, do we have any public comment on this?
I have no request to speak.
Chair Hartman, I had understood from our retirement board that there was a request that as the board makes this motion that you actually discuss the actual seat numbers that these persons would be going into. And there are 2 of those seats.
Well, we'd like to do that if we knew what they were. So if Mr. Levin could help us with that, that'd be great.
No, I do. Yes, we received a memorandum from Mr. Levin, and maybe Mr. Levin can elaborate on that on the assignment of the seat numbers. And if we could make that a part of the motion, that would help Mr. Levin out.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Lavanino. The two seats that are vacant on the Board of Retirement are seat number 4 and seat number 9. And why we made this request is that the seats are defined in the statute as being specifically appointed by the Board of Supervisors. And we apologize for the late notice on this minor technical correction and appreciate you amending your motion as recommended to incorporate that. For the purposes, there's no difference in the rights, responsibilities, tenure, or power of the two individual seats, but for the purposes of convenience, we've preliminarily assigned Mr. Sten to seat number 9 and Mr. Benedetti to seat number 4, consistent with the recommended action from the ad hoc committee.
Okay, great. Well, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we appoint Mr. Ted Sten to serve on the Retirement Board for a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2020 into seat 9, and appoint Mr. Trent Benedetti to a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2020 into seat 4.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? So they stand appointed. Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry I didn't bring this up when we were talking about the meeting on Friday, but the motion was to include all, the balance of the D agenda, but I'm wondering about item D4, which was the presentation on the county's participation on the Alliance of Race and Equity. Being that we have a tight time frame, if maybe that could be moved to another meeting.
CEO Miyasato?
It's been moved to the 13th of February.
We have a request to continue that item to February 13th.
So then it would modify the
Yes.
So the motion, okay. So
Yes.
then I'm going to move that item D4 be moved to February, what is it, Mr. Allen?
13th.
13th.
And I will second that. All in favor? Any further discussion? And do we have any public comment?
No request to speak.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. So that brings us to item D6. Nick.
Chair Hartman and members of the board, item D6 is from Public Works, and as the Board of Directors of the Flood Control and Water Conservation District and General Services, it's a hearing to consider recommendations regarding the Lower Mission Creek Reaches 2B Phase 2 and 3 involving De La Vina Holdings, LLC. This is APN number 037-24518 regarding fee acquisitions. This is in the 2nd District, and 4/5 vote is required.
Okay, and this item that we want to continue until January 30th, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and Mr. Gazzoni?
And Chair Hartman, I would just add that the request to continue came from both the landowner, property owner who was in with public comment earlier, as well as a writing from Mr. Robert Silverstein, who identifies himself as the attorney representing the landowner, and requested a continuance by Mr. Silverstein of at least 2 weeks, so that would fit that time frame. So it would be in response to a requested continuance.
Okay, and do we have any public comment on this?
No request to speak.
Okay, so may I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion, and any opposed? Motion passes. So that concludes today's rather disjointed agenda, except for closed session. And Mr. Gazzoni, would you tell us what we're going to do in closed session today?
Chair Hartman and Supervisors, today we have 2 separate existing litigation matters, both of which should be fairly brief. The first is sitting as the Board of Directors of the Santa Barbara County Flood Control and Water Conservation District in a case involving the Funk Youth Zone Hostel. The second is a workers' compensation case, Villa El Pondo versus County of Santa Barbara, as well as a conference with labor negotiators for all bargaining units, unrepresented employees, managers, and executives.
Good. All righty. We'll be back after closed session. the meeting of January 29th, 2018 in the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors here in the Santa Barbara hearing room. We have flooding today and a flooding emergency and lives lost. We don't yet have full reports, but we know our emergency personnel are out rescuing people as we meet here today. But I would like to just take a moment of silence to reflect on those people and all those who are working to try to rescue them and help them. Thank you. Mr. Gazzoni, you were going to report out from closed session.
Chair and Supervisors, today in closed session, the board considered 3 matters. The first was an existing litigation case, Santa Barbara County Flood Control and Water Conservation District versus Funk Youth Zone Hostel. The second was a workers' compensation case, Villalpando versus County Santa Barbara, as well as conference with labor negotiators for all bargaining units, unrepresented employees, managers, and executives, and there are no reportable actions today.
Thank you. So we will be meeting on Friday, January 12th, 8 to 1 in the Planning Commission hearing room. So we're adjourned until then.